Um, we haven't for a while when we were not having some mistakes, like that, many times.
Yeah. You can see all that conflict. You imagine that.
It's huge.
Several years ago. Yeah, we went on the rail trail.
They're down by Jay and Angie's house.
Hmm.
They're often, they're the river there.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August 6th meeting of the Village of New Paltz Planning Board. Tonight we have some administrative business to take care of. Then we'll have 2 public hearings and a few additional application reviews. So to start, I'd like to review the July 16th minutes. Does anyone have any comments on those or changes to those?
Submitted.
I did, yeah, Rachel gave me 2 corrections that I made,
Okay,
so,
excellent.
and they're in the OneDrive as corrected.
Great. In that case, I'd like to get a resolution approving the 7/16 minutes.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Next up, there's an item that we want to discuss about escrow accounts. So in the past, the village board, the treasurer has asked us to make resolutions specifically closing all the escrow accounts. However, our director of planning has suggested that he have the responsibility of closing those individual accounts. Am I getting that right, Mike?
Yeah, so in the past, because there was not a position like mine now, it was a clerical position previously. The court wanted a resolution from the board to close out the escrow accounts. But when I spoke to Nicole, she said, well, the board doesn't really know when they're done and when they're not done. And she and I are conferring back and forth on a daily basis, so to both of us, it makes sense that I'm just the one who says, yes, we've received all the invoices for this account, for this application, now we can close it. So that's simply what this resolution is. It's just to take the responsibility off of the board and to put it on me to close out the escrow.
Okay, thanks. Were there any questions on that? Any objections to doing that? All right. In that case, I'd like to get a motion to authorize the Director of Planning, Zoning, and Code Enforcement to be responsible and make recommendations to the Planning Board for the administration, establishment, and closure of individual escrow accounts established for the funding of application consultant review.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next we have the village board local law amending the portable housing law.
I can offer some explanation on this. If you
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
So the village board had thought it was adopted. Seeker was not properly done prior to their adopting the law. And so I spoke with the mayor. And it also, they are required to refer anything involving land use to the Ulster County Planning Board and to this board, which also did not happen. So the public hearing has already happened and been closed. So they have backed the process up. They're doing the referrals. They established the lead agency under seeker. They'll be voting at their next village board meeting for a negative declaration because they are the only involved agency under seeker. And then the following meeting, once the comments from the county planning board and from this board, if there are any, are received, the change is simply the one sentence that any projects 21 units or greater will now be 15% required affordable housing, whereas previously everything was 10%. So that's the one sentence that's changing in the law.
Thank you.
Have they gone through all these processes for the first iteration of the law at 10%?
We didn't go back, I'm assuming they did, yeah, it was, they had the public hearing, they discussed it, and for whatever reason, the seeker was neglected, so. Just to put the proper procedure on it. The mayor and I spoke, and so they're backing it up, once it's adopted, it will be filed with New York State, as he said last meeting.
And it affects all the site plans that have been approved under the understanding that they were going to follow.
That I don't know, that'll be up to them, what they will do when they adopt the law, they will set with that adoption in the resolution. Which projects it takes effect, I believe they're putting this for projects moving forward, not anything that's already been approved. So.
Yeah, I think the whole board is in support of the change of the language. I do agree that it's a little ambiguous right now and it would be good to know.
Yeah.
Well,
if you want to make a recommendation one way or the other, that's sort of what this comment period is you can make a recommendation to them. As to what you think the language should be, and they can certainly make any appropriate changes. So if you think it's, for example, the 145, I believe, North Chestnut, and the other one there, they have gotten approval from this board, but they have not they haven't secured building permits yet. So you could set it at, anything that doesn't have building permit status, this could apply to, or you could say anything that has site plan approval or any new applications, whatever, you think the wording should be. Emily can probably chime in better than looking on the legalities of it, but.
Yeah, I mean, once someone has a vested right, then I think you'd have a problem, but that only occurs after they basically start building.
Shovel in the ground,
Yeah.
right, so the building permit stage could be a logical, say that any application that is required that has not secured a building permit, that this would apply to.
Are there permits prior to the building permit? Do they have to get permits for foundations?
No, you have to get a building permit for a foundation as
So
well.
the building permit. They can't even put a shovel in the ground for a foundation in the ground
Correct.
until they have a building permit.
And neither one of those applications, to my knowledge, has signed site plans yet. Because they've gotten site plan approval from this board, they have an approved decision, but the plans aren't signed until certain
Conditions are met.
conditions are met. And they are still in the process of finalizing those conditions.
So there's the site plan approval, then the actual signing of the site plan, and that's when you can get a building permit.
Yeah.
Can they clear a lot without a building permit?
I don't know that answer. I don't believe so, but I don't.
Material, because it's not only 145 North Chestnut, it's also the two projects immediately south of that.
There's the
That they have-
130.
I don't know the numbers.
Yeah.
One commonly called the Agway project, the other one commonly called the roller skate project, the roller skate park project. Those two projects, I know they have approvals from this board. There's been no site work at all on the roller skate. There has been fill brought in to the Agway site. Did you bring fill in without a permit? All right,
Yeah, I'm just not familiar enough with village law. Under state law, yes, you can.
okay.
Under
Yeah.
village law, I don't know.
It is clearly material to this whole conversation. So,
But you could word it that as Emily said, the shovel in the ground, which is, yeah.
things happen before a shovel goes in the
Yeah.
ground, that's my point. Things happen. Lots get cleared, bill is brought in, other things happen.
But that's.
We want this to take effect so that all four of those projects on North Chestnut Street, I'm speaking on behalf of the Affordable Housing Board, believe me when I tell you. All four of those projects, we want them to be under this new
Yeah. Well, Emily can speak to the vested rights.
I completely understand that. That's why I'm asking this.
Yeah,
But I mean, a small amount of just bringing in fill probably wouldn't trigger that. It has to be a substantial, investment that's made.
Okay, so in my opinion, all four of those projects would fall under this new ordinance, which. From the Affordable
Perhaps
Housing Board's
that's-
opinion, that is great.
perhaps the better way to write the recommendation is use the word vested rights rather than building permit. And as she said, that, or however you want to,
Well.
I'll let Emily.
We'll let the attorney work that out.
Yeah,
But certainly my intent here is to have. Well, the small project, which is down across the street from Stewart's.
Right.
That would not fall under this because it's not 21 units. But the other three projects would. One is 60, one is 60, one is 120.
Sure.
Do I just put that in the resolution and say, look, up to and including
yeah.
this one, and everything in the future?
Probably be better to state it as a rule and not specific projects,
Sure.
so I think,
Okay.
but. Until the construction commences, maybe, or,
Whatever language you think of, hold on.
You could also, if you want to, if the board wanted to authorize Emily to make those comments on your behalf,
That'd be
she
fine.
can get them too, and then she can do a little research and then.
And here's the thing about all this project, this process of getting this ordinance changed. The devil is in the detail. The two projects that are 60 units each, roughly. They have approval from us with the 10% set aside. To the point where they've even identified how many 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms are gonna be part of it. That all needs to be redone. How they do that, they can come back here, but it needs to be redone. And somebody needs to tell them it needs to be redone.
And where would they go? Would they go to us or to the Affordable Housing Board?
No, we have no authority over it.
So it's up to them,
No
that
authority.
what they decide to do, it's gonna be up to them now?
Well,
That
could
extra
use a
5%.
little bit more clarity.
yeah, so. To backtrack, what you're doing at this point is you're making a recommendation to the village board. The village board, if you have these questions, you might want to put them in your recommendation of, we have these questions. And then the village board and their attorney will come, I can't come up with the answers. Only they can come up with the answers to, and to be sort of full transparency, they could reject that and say, no, we're just gonna move forward with new applications.
That's fine.
Yeah, but I think anything you want, any of these questions, you probably should include in these comments to the village board. And to make sure that they're,
Okay.
put into writing. So that'd be my recommendation, that you have Emily write these, and if she can get them to me by the end of the week, that would be great, by Friday, by the end of Friday. would be great.
So just to summarize, we're all in agreement at the board that we believe this law should apply to applications who have not received a building permit yet.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, and then the question would be. Those applications that have site plan approval. Would they have to come back to the planning board for amended? Right, so this.
I would hope not, and I would think that they could just use the currently approved distribution of affordable units, but yeah, I guess that's,
I mean, somebody else
They
would
could
have
be
to
able to decide
interpret.
with the building inspector, it doesn't have to be us.
I agree.
Sure, it could be the building.
I have a quick comment, that I was thinking about the NBR, since I see we're getting some new people coming down to the NBR that want to build, more housing, with retail on the first floor. And as long as we're making some, recommendations to the village board, this came up in my mind. I think we're really being overtaken by first floor retail. The upcoming projects, we already have first, floor retail in the village, we've zoned for that in the B2 and the B3 and the Gateway and all these areas. And I am noticing that we have some empty stores And we're starting to run out of original ideas for services and shops in our village. And we really need housing. We have a lot of handicapped people that will be served better. People with disabilities and seniors that might prefer to live on the first floor. And I was thinking that it would be a great idea if the village board might want to consider moving forward to allow housing on the first floor in NBR. Just an idea, we need housing. I don't really know how many more stores we need. It's really up to the retailers, obviously, but it's just my idea, and I just wanted to run it by the board.
We brought that up before. It's up to the village board to change it.
Yeah.
Right, so I'm just putting the idea out there that since we're writing them a note, maybe it's a good time to ask them what they think again. Because now all these other things got approved and now things are gonna change.
Yeah, I would recommend that possibly you do that as a separate note, rather because it's not specifically about the affordable housing.
Okay,
But you can certainly send them a letter if somebody either wants to draft something or even just
is
give me
the
some.
board interested in this
Yeah,
type of?
I'm happy to draft it if you want to give me some bullet
Is
points.
anybody interested in that, or you think that first floor retail is a good idea moving forward in the NPR?
I think I want to have some more discussion about it and think about it. One thing to note is that some of the first floor commercial in the new developments are professional offices and not retail.
Which we also have a lot of overabundance of.
And I don't know
vacancies.
that. I don't know that data. So I do understand the spirit behind why, ground floor commercial and retail or professional was the intent in the MBR.
I understand it too.
And so I would want to give it some more thought before I would sign on as a board position, but I think it's a great point you're making. And if you wanted to draft that memo, I think.
I'd be happy to.
I think it would be something that could come
I think we
from.
could open up a lot more apartments to our residents.
It could come from a member, even if it didn't come from the board.
Yeah,
Well,
Right.
it's good if we can get food and coffee, those are the things they need. And then
We need more. More pizza,
yeah, real food. No, I don't know if we need more pizza. That pizza, well.
Okay.
I'm kidding.
So,
Can I ask a question about the affordable housing amendment, just
sure.
about the way it's
Yeah.
worded? So this might be just ultra picky, but about fractions. So if it's 10 units, then you would need one affordable unit, right, as 10%. But if it's 9 units, then you don't need any affordable units?
that's correct.
Okay, so it might be clearer to write 10 to 20 instead of fewer than 20, because I think it's a little confusing.
That
'Cause
makes sense.
We've been rounding up,
Yeah.
like we've said, if you needed 12, or if you needed 5.5 affordable units, you'd have to put in 6. So, but under 10, we're not asking them to do any, right? So that
Under
just
10.
might make it a little clearer. right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You can add that as a comment,
yeah.
just direct.
Mike, there's someone in the waiting room.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, so we have our comments to the village board. If that's
Do you want to do a
Everything.
motion?
sure, I'd like to get a motion to authorize our attorney to send this comment back to the village board. for
And
the-
can we clarify what our comment is?
Tell you
Sure.
what I wrote down.
That was great.
That we want projects up to the point of vested rights, which we're kind of interpreting as a building permit, but I'll kind of check on that, to be subject to the new law. Number 2, that we would ask for clarification of which board does the calculations for the number of affordable units, whether it would need to come back to the planning board for that.
Yeah, and it's the calculation and distribution of
Yeah,
dollars.
Shouldn't that do with the Affordable Housing Board? I don't understand why they aren't.
they seem to really just handle the placement of families into the units, I think.
The ordinance is quite clear. We have no authority at all over that is the planning board's authority. It's very clear.
So, I mean, if that's the case, then it would kind of
Yeah.
have to come back to the planning board.
Yeah, well, that's why we should ask the village board attorney to, since it's their local law, he can offer suggestion about
Yeah,
that answer.
And then the third thing is just changing it to 10 to 20 units and not fewer than.
Yeah.
Is that what the board wants?
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, can I get a motion, referring those comments to the village board?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next up, I'd like to talk about our public comment.
It's in your packet, the printed packet, because Rich sent it.
Very late.
Evening.
Yes.
But thank you for sending
Thank you
it.
for
That's okay.
putting that together. Rich, should we just quickly go through it?
Maybe I can just share the intention and give everybody a chance to read it before the next meeting. If you
Sure.
want to digest it
Yeah.
a little more, but, you know, my thought was that in the interest of, you know, continuing to provide every opportunity for a speaker to share, their, comments for a, public hearing or, for public comment at the, meetings. And, but also, with that opportunity, also managing the time and length of meetings. You know, respecting the board and the applicant's kind of process. And also, thinking about, the idea that we're often registering, a comment, that is repeated multiple times by multiple speakers, but also repeated multiple times by a single speaker. And so just thinking about ways that we could try to organize our public comment, our public hearing a bit. Because I think I understood that there isn't any guidelines for that in our code, but that guidelines for that exist in lots of other municipalities' codes. And so Emily was kind enough to share a couple of examples of municipalities that have code or that have language in their code that provides guidance for public comments and public hearing. And I took a look at those couple examples and integrated them into what I thought was most applicable for our board. And I shared those only today. Sorry about that. I meant to share it earlier. And my thought is that we could take a look at them on our own, or we could discuss them briefly if we wanted to now. And I don't know if that's something we adopt or if we have to recommend it to the village board and be a part of our meeting procedure. I'm not sure, but
I think you can, the
You're-
board can adopt.
Yeah,
its own
you're allowed
procedures.
to,
Yeah,
policies and procedures of your board, you're allowed to adopt. So this would be one of those.
that's the intention and that's the context.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't get a chance to read through it fully, but the only one question I had is if you think there should be different rules or different limits for public hearings versus public comment, just general public comment.
I think that the material that I recommended could be universally applied to both public comment and public hearing.
I was wondering if it could also apply to the applicants.
I don't know if these things are really make sense in application review, because that's more of a discussion.
No, but I mean, during the public hearing, they shouldn't be allowed to go. You know, behind the people. It's-
Yeah, that's in there.
That's part of.
No gestures, no clapping,
Right, but the.
no dialogue.
Applicant is included in that.
Well,
Yes,
yeah,
they are. They are.
includes the audience.
That's rules of order of the meeting.
Yeah, and it's also particularly mentioned in these guidelines, because even rules of order of the meeting generally aren't necessarily followed. And what I think this also does is gives discretion to the chair to interrupt and to request consideration during a time when someone is speaking too long, or someone is repeating something that they've repeated in meetings before, or someone asked to approach a second time. These are all things that, I've been on the planning board some time through large and small projects that have had, that have created some real delays in an applicant's experience and in our own volunteer time because of some of these rules. And I think that it's time that we just take a little bit of control without suppressing voice and trying in any way to not be inclusive of all the people who get to speak.
Something else you might want to consider, and I'm not advocating for or against it, but some boards put general public comment at the end, only because the board is here to do a legal process, and that's to review the applicants. Now, certainly time limits will help shorten that public comment, but if it's held, or some put a 15-minute maximum time on it, or things like that. I'm just telling you examples, because a 45-minute or an hour public comment about generalized topics can certainly puts a lot of burden on you guys to do the rest of your meeting.
And the other way people use public comment is if an application, someone wants to comment on an application that's not having a public hearing that evening, they'll come in during public comment and
Correct.
speak about that application. And so, yeah, we could think about the position of public comment in the meeting. I recommend that.
I personally don't like that at all. I feel like to make the public sit through our entire meeting so that they can make a 4-minute comment is really not cool at all.
I'm just pointing out examples of what you can do.
And of course, submitting in writing, we had a very thoughtful couple submissions that we had prepared for this meeting. That's encouraged as well, not people being discouraged to speak, but just having some guidelines.
Well, let me say, after gone through many, many years of municipal governmental meetings, I agree with everything that you've written here, Rich, except for the time limits. I just don't think that I want to limit people's abilities to say whatever they want to me. I mean, they have no right to be rude. They have no right to do that, but to me, I don't think we should have time limits. That's just my opinion. Whatever the board decides, you decide, that's fine. But, that's part of government. And I'm sorry if an applicant who comes before a public board at a public meeting somehow feels like they're being held up because the people who live here are making comments. There's no place for that in my mind. They've come before us. They've come before the citizens of this village. Let them have their say. If it takes 2 hours, if it takes 3 hours, I just think they should have their say. But all the other things, I completely agree. There's no need to be rude. There's no need to address people in the audience. All the comments should be directed to the chair and only the chair. That's just my opinion.
We have to have time limits, please, on the comments. I mean,
It's just me.
I'm very, very in favor of public comment, but if we don't draw at 5 minutes or whatever, this could go on for hours with one person.
That's
It
correct.
comes to every meeting. And I personally am a volunteer and I cannot stay here till 1 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
You make people cede their time, the way they do in Congress. Like if each person comes in, gets 4 minutes, and then they
Yeah.
can give their 4 minutes to someone else.
We have to encourage our residents to be concise and to be organized in their discussions with us.
And they're certainly more than willing to provide the full length of comments in written form. I do agree that I think public comments should have a time limit, and I would be more open to having a longer limit in a public hearing when it's, this is specifically focused on a application and this is the period set aside for hearing all the public's reaction to that, so that would be my only suggestion, maybe a limit of 5 or 6 minutes for the public hearing on a specific application and 3 or 4 minutes for general public comment.
One comment I have just off the top of my head, and I would defer to Emily's opinion, but I vaguely remember that you cannot require somebody to give their name. You can ask them if they're willing to, but Emily can research that. I vaguely remember there was court precedents that said people can speak at a public comment without divulging their name, but that's just the legalese answer, to look into, just because of the word must, that's the only reason I jumped out at me,
Good point.
but I don't necessarily have the answer, so.
All right, well, are there any other initial reactions from the board, any suggestions that we want to consider right now? If not, I would recommend us each reading through this, before the next meeting and coming in with any specific changes, so we could develop a final version that we can adopt.
Okay. Good.
All right. So that's all. I'd like to move on to our updates from the village board and Ulster County Planning Board.
Yeah, Bill emailed right before the meeting and said he was gonna be unable to be here, so.
Okay. So
And he said, thank you for all the work you do.
thank you, Bill. Moving on, any updates from the Environmental Policy Board? Mitchell?
I don't have any, but I didn't go to the meeting, so
Okay,
that's why.
and how about the town planning? Board?
The town planning board has no updates because the last meeting was canceled.
Thank you. Lastly, any updates from our Director of Planning, Zoning and Code Enforcement?
Just one that I received the red line version of the New Paltz Apartments FEIS this morning. It's a large file that can't be emailed. It's in the Google Drive under the New Paltz Apartments. I also emailed all of you, I forwarded to you the link that they sent to me. I'm presuming that if you have that link, you can directly get it from their site if you choose to, but it is in the OneDrive. And they did a red line version as was requested that shows all the changes. And they also did a separate letter where they addressed the comments that the board members made point by point. So they are scheduled to be on our agenda next meeting. So if you can just review them between now and then. And so that's where we are. That's the only update I have.
Great, thank you. So next, I'd like to open the public comment section. Is there anyone here tonight that would like to make a general public comment, not about one of the two applications that have their public hearing scheduled? Okay, anyone online?
There's two people online. Does anyone wish to speak? If you could either raise your hand or unmute yourself. Here's not.
All right, in that case, we'll move on to our first public hearing.
I've got the sign-in sheets over here, so that it's check.
Okay.
One person signed up for each.
Okay, could I get a motion to open the public hearing for PB 2401, 3B Church Street?
So
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Would anyone like to make a comment on 3B Church Street?
It is, Myra, is it Soren? Okay.
Please come up to the table if you don't mind. Yeah, thank you.
I'm here as a public citizen, not a representative of the Jewish congregation in Portsmouth. I am a member of the congregation, but I'm not on the board representing them. There's a proposal for a bar across the street from the synagogue. And my understanding that is that it's illegal. I have the law here. To have a place serving alcohol within 200 feet of a house of worship. And a synagogue, of course, is a house of worship, just like a church. And I haven't gone out and measured it, but it's, if you know the location, it's by Barner's Book across the street. And then you go down a hill a little bit and the entrance to that location is right there. So I would say it's what, 4 to 6 car lengths. A car length is what, 10 feet, 12 feet, so most of it would be 120 feet. So I think that should eliminate it automatically. Would you agree with that? I mean, that takes it out, they cannot have a bar there.
They received a variance, so that's why they're allowed to open.
Okay,
The zoning board gave them a variance.
there's only what?
The zoning board, the village zoning board gave them a variance already.
I don't believe that the synagogue was notified that there was a proposal. And I think either tradition or ethics or law should require that they be notified. The same thing happened twice in the past. I wasn't on board at one of those times. When Huckleberry Place down Church Street applied, and then when the place that was previously in this location applied. And we tried to fight the previous location, but we couldn't because it applied as a farm store. It was selling goods from their farm, which was, I think, not correct. It included, I don't know,
It included beer.
it included beer, and they served beer as well. So they got in, we applied, we asked the state to change it. They said, we can't, it's a legal possibility for them to be there. So we had met with them, I don't remember at which point, but they agreed to certain accommodations. They said they would not be open later than, I don't know, something like 9 or 10 o'clock. Taverns can stay open until what, 3 in the morning in Newport. They agreed that they would try to keep the noise levels down, things like that. They were very good, and we didn't have any problems with them. But I see a bar tavern as something very different. I see it as serving alcohol to anybody who comes in. They can leave the premises, walk around, and as a synagogue these days, we are very worried, the congregation. We have security anytime we have a big event. And the whole United States is really suffering an increase in anti-Semitic language, attacks. You know, I've got to do that. So I personally think it would be a really bad idea to have a bar that close to our synagogue. Okay. What else there? Oh, the letter that the president of the board sent, he sent it to me because I raised this issue with him. Says that we would try to be good neighbors. And I think that's a nice thing. The owner of the bar could maybe be a good neighbor. But what about the patrons of the bar? They could be students, they could be people from out of town, they could be people looking for trouble. They could be nice people who get drunk and then they lose their inhibitions and they see a synagogue and they scribble on it or break something, or they do it to other things in that area too. But as a synagogue, I am very worried for my congregation. Okay, what else? But I have a question. If a variance was granted for this bar to be there, but it's against the law, the state law, can it be there?
Can I clarify that?
Sure,
So
yeah.
there are two different laws that we might be talking about. The village code requires that a bar or tavern cannot be located within 500 feet of a school or church. And that is the code that the ZBA was giving a variance from. The state law is separate, and that would be with the state agency that provides the license. They would have to look at the distance.
Okay, I have the law here if you want.
Well, it's just not something that this board gets involved with because
Okay.
it's the state liquor authority, I think, that issues those
Yeah.
licenses. They would need to confirm whether their code is met.
So the business should contact the state and find out if it's legal for them.
They would need to do that to get their liquor license, yeah.
Before they could gain a certificate of occupancy for a bar tavern from the building department. That's one of the accomplishments. The planning board is only reviewing the ability to do the use. They still have to secure the state permit. So if that is indeed the state law, they could potentially be denied from the state.
It would
And
be-
even though they have approval from this board, they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that's a possibility.
Yeah, it would be useful for them to know that before I put it.
Well, that would be in their application,
Okay.
so.
Okay, I think, the letter from our president also said that we want to encourage businesses, local businesses and people. And I'm not against that, I'm just against this particular business. And I think that's it.
Thank you.
So thank you. I'm thinking of all.
Thanks.
Sorry to hear you're so scared.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry that you're scared.
Yes. I'm sorry for this atmosphere in our country. Yeah, thank you.
But nothing bad happened to you when there was a bar there before.
Well, it wasn't a bar. It was a farm store. That's
Oh, all right, I'm sorry, I shouldn't do this.
No, do you see the difference? It was just beer and it was limited hours.
I think the applicant will, come up soon and they will be able to respond to some of your concerns.
Okay, so what happens now?
The applicant will be coming up and we'll be asking them questions.
Oh, I
and
see.
There'll be a review.
We do the public hearings first and then we do the application.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just, Mr. Chairman, just to note for the record that we also received a written comment from Scott Mintoff, his congregation, and that's part of the record, so.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here that would like to make a public comment on this application? 3B Church Street. Okay, seeing none, could I get a motion to close the public hearing for PB 2401?
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Next, could I get a motion to open the public hearing for PB 24-13, 11 Water Street?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone here tonight to make a comment on 11 Water Street?
You have one person signed up, Vincent Veriano.
Oh,
I will go inside. Good, thank you, I think it's not. That I heard your discussion on public comment. I will attempt to be brief. I was here earlier in the year on this subject. I'm afraid they are repeats, but it's just follow-up, so. It's two parts of what I had brought up before. One, which I learned from another public comment, which was the overflowing sewage right out front on rainy days. So I happened to be going by earlier this year. I'll give you this picture. This shows a colored version of the stuff coming out of the ground there. I have a video. I have no idea how, if you want to see it or how to get it on
Thank you.
thing, but you know, it.
You can
yeah.
email that to the board if you want to. You
Pardon?
can email it to us.
Oh, okay. Great, but obviously, you know, it wasn't just like a little hoop, it was flowing right out of there, and I understand that's going to be exacerbated by the hotel. It's a fundamental issue. Spewage of the sewage, I've named it even, so there, and I think it's a foundational issue that really needs a solution before we proceed and add more toxic waste into the river. So that's all I'm gonna say about that. The other thing that my wife and I discussing, the traffic study was determined to be an A road now, and it's gonna be A afterwards, which is as good as it can get, I guess, no impact. I did look at the site plan. I noticed the road is being reduced from 51 feet to 29.5 feet at one point, right as you exit Water Street, Plains Road, and come into the intersection. There's 80 families that down that area that we pass that by every day. I'm not sure where you guys live, but it's a contentious sort of intersection, which you've heard many comments about. The site plan does not have the parking lot for the apartment complex across the street on it, which is another traffic source, if you will. So I guess really you know, the thing I want to point out, and maybe I mentioned this already, and I apologize. People leaving Water Street Market pretty much ignore the stop sign there. They come out of there on a blind curve, which will still exist coming up the hill from here. The rail trail crosses there with people, et cetera. If we now add 28 cars arriving, and it's now an increase of rooms, I understand 28 cars arriving and departing. Midday on weekends, into this, you know, it's really where it hits Main Street where it starts getting backed up. And I'd like to invite you to come and try to come through that intersection on the weekend and make a left turn and head out towards the hiking areas. It's really difficult. So just something to consider. I would love to recommend an independent traffic study, not developed by the paid for by the developer, to check whether there's really an impact there. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
Would you like the copy?
Oh,
Yeah. Do you have that photo? I'll include that.
Yeah.
I'll include that.
Now, is the planning board is where I would email the data?
It's planning zoning at Village of New Dallas. is my email.
Thank you very much.
Thank
for your
you.
time And your volunteer service.
Thank
you.
Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment on 11 Water Street? Okay. Seeing none, I'd like to get a motion to close the public hearing for PB 24-13 11 Water Street.
Oh, second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So now for our first application review, I'd like to call up PB 2401 3B Church Street.
Are we sure nobody wanted to comment from Zoom? They would have. Some of us.
Yeah, it's, the two people that are on the line, do either of you wish to comment on the 11 Water Street? I think they're just observing.
Hello. I guess my first question is, if you got a chance to look at the letter from the Jewish congregation and.
That, no, if we were sent.
I may not have gotten here. Here's a copy. You can
Sure.
take that. So apologies.
And also if there's anything that you'd like to respond to from the public hearing, you know, maybe misunderstandings you'd like to correct.
I mean, of course, we intend to be, you know, as respectful to all of our neighbors as possible.
Please address the board.
And we don't intend to do anything, yeah, to disturb the neighborhood, noise wise, public volume wise. You know, we're not looking to do hard alcohol, which is, you know, there are bars and restaurants in the neighborhood in block radius that has, you know, there is Huckleberry, there is alcohol and bars around. We're looking to do a local tasting room of sorts with beer, wine, and cider.
And we're looking to do some food as well,
Yeah,
and
so cafe kind of program.
cafe kind of vibe with clothing. So it's not just focusing on the alcohol.
Yes, it's like a boutique cafe, and then we're looking to add some alcohol to it. In the source, yeah, in terms of beer, wine, and cider. And then we're not looking to be open late night, every night sort of a thing.
What are your hours?
Our hours are noon till 8 on Fridays till Monday, so kind of a weekend thing. We close at 8 p.m. Yeah, we're looking to copy sort of the kind of vibe that the previous tenant in the space had.
You close at 8 p.m. every night?
Yes. And then we're closed, what, three days a week?
Tuesday through Wednesday we're closed.
Yeah, so
Thursday.
we're not looking to cause any more of a disruption in the neighborhood as the previous tenant would have. So, yeah.
I mean,
We do plan to stay open till 2 AM on Friday and Saturday nights.
Yeah,
That's
Friday,
only
Friday,
Friday.
Saturday, we're, you know, looking at doing anything like that.
And just to remind the board how, like, how many approximate visitors, or what's the like maximum occupancy?
Oh, it's very minimal, yeah.
It's a small
Like
space, so
What was that?
it's
30?
30,
I think it was
30
30.
or so people.
I think it was
Yeah.
30. So it's a very minimal amount of people, it's very gonna be contained.
we're not doing music outdoors,
So there'll be no music outside at all.
No music out.
no music outside. We're not serving hard liquor.
Yeah, just beer and wine.
Yeah,
And-
and then there's a large retail portion of what we're doing too.
Yeah.
There's clothing that we're selling. We're gonna be selling, you know, we do have a cafe food program.
So does
with
that
our-
mean that people who are under the age of 21 can come into your establishment?
Currently, yes, and we don't have,
If you were to have the liquor license, would that mean that you would only allow 21 and up in your place? Or would you allow others?
it's not just gonna be a bar tavern. It is a boutique and a cafe, along with, we're looking to add some beer, wine and cider in the mix.
So it'd be kind of like a brewery, where it's like all ages, but if you order it, then we'd ID.
The reason it got classified, excuse me, as the bar tavern is because of the wanting to stay open past midnight, which is the village law criteria. So if they were just being a cafe, they could serve alcohol, but they would not be able to open past midnight. So,
I think it also had to do with the number of seats.
Oh, okay.
Tables,
Yeah.
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 Hmm.
But just to note that the outdoor cafe regulations say it can only, the outdoor cafe can only operate till 9 PM.
Yes.
So inside might be open later, but the outdoor part would close at 9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there wouldn't be any issues with people being outside.
So, I recall in either the last or the prior conversation about this application, we did bring up some considerations around, potentially some parameters we might request to be included in the resolution as specific conditions that we were thoughtful about, given there's, we didn't specifically discuss the house of worship, but we also talked about that there's residential neighbors, it was super close, and that it's an application that needed to obtain a variance in order to locate in that location. So, and then I think it wasn't necessarily voted on, but it was sort of moved forward and said, no, let's not impose anything specific around these issues at the meeting.
Well, we did have some specific conditions in the resolution.
As it turned out, the things that you all discussed at the last meeting were the same specific conditions that were in the previous
The hourly.
resolution. Well, no, in the Star Chappelle's previous resolution, which was that the outdoor cafe would close by 9 PM as per the code, and that there would be no outdoor music performance. That's what I picked up from the minutes. I
Yeah.
wasn't here at the last.
So the specific condition, the first condition says the applicant allows the addition of, as part of a previously approved site plan and special use permit. That's referring to their original clothing sale.
Another outdoor cafe.
We've gotten multiple.
Yeah, it's referring to both, it's listed earlier in the resolution, but it's referring to the Arrowwood site plan and the special use permit for for their cafe.
Okay, so does anyone remember what those specific conditions
Yeah.
were?
Yeah,
The
that's
two-
what those
The
are.
two were the same that I typed back in here, which were the outdoor cafe has to close by 9 PM and there's no outdoor music performance.
Okay, so those are,
Do we want to include, besides the performance, do we want to include recorded music in that as well?
I didn't think we did want to.
They just said that they don't want to play any music outside at all.
so,
You did have that discussion last meeting, but it was left as just performance, just as a reminder. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
One way or the other, but there, I remember there was a discussion. And Rich, actually, what you were saying is, and what Emily said, those two conditions were asked to be put in for specific conditions. But as Emily said, they were already existing in their approval for the outdoor cafe. So you don't need to reiterate them a second time.
Unless
I
you wanna
typed
add
it in just for
recorded
goodness.
music.
Yeah, unless you wanna add and change it and say recorded music.
Yeah, I mean, I'm opposed to that. I don't.
But the Arrowwood establishment was able to be open until 2 AM?
They were a farm brewery, which has a whole different set of standards.
That's a good
Because it's an
question.
agricultural.
Yeah.
So
well,
I'm trying to
they're-
understand, and excuse me, I was
Because you're
trying to
right, they
finish
have
my
a site plan.
clarification before I can contribute to the conversation. So the specific condition number one. Is that referring to when it says the previously approved site plan and special use permit? That's the site plan and special use permit for this applicant's business or for the prior occupant's business?
Both. So they don't have a separate site plan. They use the site plan from Arrowwood. But the special use permit was for their business. So are you asking, and I think you're asking a good question, should we look back at the site plan conditions for Arrowwood?
I just want to first confirm what conditions we are imposing based on the resolution we have before us. That's what I'm trying to confirm. And then, because then it says, except for the addition of bar tavern use, which is a pretty significant addition, the previous plans and approvals for the site remain unchanged. So I'm just trying to understand what are the conditions that are, and if you're saying that number one refers to number 2 and 3, then I have clarity. If it's number 1 refers to things other than 2 and 3, then I don't know by memory what those things are.
Do you have the decision in there?
Yeah, it doesn't look to me like it was a site plan, so it would not be unusual that it didn't have. Special conditions.
Well, I mean, Rich, are you now questioning the actual like terms of the bar tavern use and wanting to review all the rules around that use?
What I'm trying to understand is, what limitations we put on them by virtue of the currently drafted resolution. No, I'm
So
not,
here-
not questioning the bar tavern use. I'm asking what it is we've done to, if anything, to change or restrict what their rights are.
Okay, I can tell you what was in the Arrowwood original resolution. They need to submit a final site plan, something about the stairwell dimensions, so these are physical things. The liquor authority license. Okay, the rear ADA access shall remain safe and free of snow and ice. And that's it.
And then what about the,
And for
The
the
cafe.
special use permit, it was exactly these two things, that the outdoor cafe must close by 9 and no outdoor music performance.
So under the resolution as written, for example, they could have audible music during the congregation's holiday or service. And just want to make and I'm just bringing up, what are the issues of conflict we're seeing here between the community?
But they already said they don't wanna do that.
I don't know, I don't think they said they don't want to
They
do
said,
that.
they already said they're not gonna have any music outside.
Is
Do
that-
you guys say that?
I mean, we're happy to not.
So why don't
We
you
don't
just
have
put it in
plans
the
to put
resolution? and see
speakers
what's
outside.
I
No, there are neighboring businesses that do that, but we don't have plans to do that also. We're happy to, that needs to be put in writing, that's.
Yeah, I don't.
That's not, our intention,
Mhm.
playing music outdoors.
That's really considerate.
Plus Lola's has a band there all the time, so you'll just be having the war the bands.
I mean, is the rest of the board in favor of that, or do they think it's necessary?
Well, I like to make a motion to not allow any music outside, and the applicant has already offered that. So if the board's on board, maybe we should just take a quick vote.
Okay, sure, we can vote on amending this specific condition to say no approval granted for,
Outdoor music.
Just review,
Period.
remove the word performance.
okay.
Cross it out.
I would second that motion.
All right, all in favor?
Um,
Aye.
And all opposed, I'm opposed, but looks like in that case, it is,
So that you were opposed?
yeah,
Okay, and everybody else was aye? Okay, thank you.
so let's just remove that word then, and were there any other specific conditions that we think needed? Okay, and you both have gotten a chance to read these and understand what the resolution of approval says as well?
Yep.
Okay,
You want a copy to refer to? Do you need one or you should?
thank you. So I'd like to just quickly read through this list of conditions as we will be approving them. So number one, this approval allows the addition of a bar tavern use alcohol service as part of a previously approved site plan and special use permit. Except for the addition of the bar tavern use, the previous plans and approvals for the site remain unchanged. Number two, as stated in the previous approval, the alcohol cafe must maintain compliance with the standards in 212-41J, including but not limited to closure by 9 p.m. Number three, there's been no approval granted for outdoor music.
I have a question, since the applicant has already said that they will not be serving hard liquor. And that they will only be serving beer, wine, and cider, perhaps we could put that in our resolution. Otherwise, we open it up to another, like, if they leave and another bar comes and they sell shots there, and it could be a whole other type of a bar.
What if they just wanna put creme de menthe on some whipped cream?
I mean, it's fine with me personally, but they've already said that they don't serve hard alcohol. There's a big difference between a cafe that serves wine and beer and a bar that serves hard alcohol.
Can I ask a question of procedure? If you grant a special use permit, does then it have to be approved separately, like to Amy's question, like they leave, somebody else comes in, they have to get their own special, there is a continual renewal of the special use permit.
It's not specific to the owner. So, if it were a very different business, then it might need a different permit, but, yeah.
I can speak to Amy's comment. I'm not personally focused on what type of alcohol is being served and think that has any implications.
We've heard from the synagogue, that's the reason I bring it up.
Yeah, I understand. And that's not something that I would stop. I think that, that's not as much of a concern for me as it is having, as it is the issue we've already addressed. So that's my perspective.
Yeah, I agree that I don't think that's a big concern, considering there are numerous other establishments on that street that also serve alcohol, serve hard alcohol. I do think it would be excellent if you had a communication with the synagogue and made some affordances for the holidays and
Review their calendar.
yeah,
Transparent, of course.
Be a good neighbor.
exactly.
Yeah, they laid it out pretty specifically in their
Mhm.
letter.
Okay, so if there are no additional specific conditions that the board wants to add, I'd like to move on to the approval. So I'd like you to get a motion to approve PB 2401 3B Church Street with the given special conditions
As amended.
as amended.
Thank you.
And could we have a roll call vote, please?
Sure. Rachel, Amy,
Aye.
Rich,
Aye.
Terry,
Aye.
Zach.
Aye.
Mm.
And so now you have your approval and, yeah. Good luck, wish you all the best.
Congratulations.
Thank you, guys. We have a copy here also.
Oh, great, so we'll get that signed and then.
Yeah, I'll have to make that one change that we just made and
Yeah, of
then
course.
I'll get, so by the end of the week, I should have a copy for you.
Yeah.
And then I may possibly need an additional copy of your site plan because we'll have to sign this. Because we signed the others for the other use, so I'll check what I have still in the records and I may need a couple of additional copies.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Next up, could we have PB 2413, 11 Water Street? No. Hello.
Well, just for taking the time. Can I push this, so it can be seen by everyone?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I think is the easel there?
Yeah.
Apologies.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah. Thanks, Rich. I appreciate that.
Probably thought this one. Is it okay if I address the public comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
I wrote down a couple of notes. So, during, I'll address the first comment that he made about the sewer, issue. And, during our project review, the sewer issue was raised, in the first public hearing by our immediate neighbor, Teresa Fall. At that time, our group agreed to a monetary contribution to the current sewer upgrade project. So we did, I just wanted to note that we did address that. And I think it's also part of our resolution that we have to comply with that agreement so that, you know, before we can even get started.
Not to mention the whole stormwater prevention plan, right, and their infrastructure upgrades.
Correct.
I mean, do you think it's safe to say that it will improve the drainage in that area?
Immensely. Yeah, because it's right now, it's all runoff, it's not being caught. Any of that stormwater is not being caught anywhere.
And I think we also know, the mayor has shared that, the origin of the issue of, overflowing sewage, or wastewater is, from infiltration and inflow from properties and lands well above, the existing property. So I don't think it was ever a concern that the proposed property is going to, the contribution to the system of the proposed property was ever going to exacerbate that issue. It's an issue that takes place beginning as far as those lines begin for infiltration. That's the issue the village is trying to address for everyone.
Yes, especially, you guys are currently working on grants for the cost of that project.
Yeah.
So, yes.
It's a perfectly valid issue to be raised, and it's been raised, and I appreciate it being raised again. So I think the contribution that has been made, and also, you know, again, just understanding the origins of that issue is really important.
Yeah. That and the fact that we are, you know, our living roof also kind of contains some of that stormwater as well. And the landscaping around where there's no real landscaping now, and then all of the underground stormwater retention will also help.
or certainly not exacerbated like it is upstream. And then, the traffic study, I'd like to also address that comment. The traffic study was paid for by us, that is correct. But the village's engineer was tasked with the review of our study by the board. I would also like to point out that being the new building will be set back, the sight line will be much wider than they are now for vehicular traffic as well as cyclers and pedestrians. So, I don't-
Okay, and did you get a chance to review the resolution of approval?
So our attorney did, and he was okay with it. I'm okay with it.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Well, before board, well, did the board have any other questions for the applicant? This time?
I just want to double make sure, because you don't have it depicted on the illustration there. The outflow, the stream that comes into the river right at the edge of your property, that's gonna remain uncovered, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
You're talking about the open culvert
Yes,
area.
the
Yeah,
open
no, we have
culvert,
no
yes.
intention of covering.
So that's all. I'd like to just read through the specific conditions of the resolution of approval before we vote. Number one, all conditions, of the previous approval for application PB 22-10 are incorporated herein by reference and remain in full force.
There were a lot of those, and one of them, sorry to interrupt, but one of
Yeah.
them was that $50,000 contribution, so that all
Right.
stays.
Yeah. Number two, the only change to the previous approval is the removal of the restaurant and event space and addition of 2 guest rooms as depicted on the plans referenced above. Number three, as noted in the previous approval, the parking lot has been designed with 30 spaces with the opportunity to convert part of the unloading area to an additional parking space if necessary for a total of 31 spaces. If the applicant determines that additional parking space is needed in the future, the space currently designated as part of the unloading area may be converted to a parking space upon approval by the building inspector without further planning board review. With that, I'd like to get a motion to approve PB 2413, 11 Water Street, with the given specific conditions.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and could we have another roll call vote, please?
Sure, Rachel, Amy,
Aye.
Rich,
Aye.
Barry,
Aye.
Zach.
Aye. So, well done. We need to get you the signed copy shortly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your time. Appreciate it.
Next, we have PB 24-14, 2022 Cooper Street. Hello?
Here's a copy for you. You can just double check that I made the corrections that you said
I think you-
correctly.
Okay,
I think I did.
Does the resolution of approval have to also include Jacob, Lawrence, and Richard Webb, or just my name?
That's the question. The resolution precedes the applicant, so do all three need to be listed? Okay.
Makes sense, right?
Okay,
I don't know, I don't think
I'll
it
correct.
matters too much.
that's okay. I can
I'm
correct.
sorry for the misspelling.
No, that's okay. I just, and then, yeah, I was like, wait, Marguerite.
Yeah, I wasn't sure on the resolution.
Canino or my
Yeah.
neighbor, it's not. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay, so there's one change to be made.
Yeah, the on page,
Take a look at the bottom.
yeah,
Right.
instead of Instead of just saying the site plan approval, instead of just saying Madeline's name, they'll say all three names.
Okay. Um. Well, does the board have any questions on the resolution?
Well, since the last meeting, I did a little bit of research. After some comments were made about asphalt being the right thing, because it's easier to repair and the neighbors have it, and, I looked it up and, you know, the life of an asphalt driveway is 35 years. For gravel, it's 100 years. And you're in an area with a big sort of freeze thaw cycle, because it's a wet area, so it's gonna need, you know, recurring repairs, regardless of what material you've used. But to repair gravel, you just need a shovel and some more gravel, maybe a rake. To repair asphalt, you need a chisel to straighten the edges, rocks and sand. Then you have to put cold asphalt in it, and you need some kind of a machine to flatten it down. And then if you want it to match your, you know, if you want a shiny coat on top, that's another thing. So I would reconsider, you know, just in the long run. And, you know, just because your neighbors are doing it doesn't mean it's right. You have the right to do it, might not still not be the right thing, even though you have a right. And also, half of your neighbors are human, but the other half, those are deer, edge predators. If you become very, very lucky, beavers might move in there. And so I would just consider them as well. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anything else? If not, I'd like to just go through the specific conditions we have here before we vote on the resolution. Number one, this approval is an amendment to the site plans for 20 and 22 Cooper Street to add a driveway along the property line to access 110 Prospect Street. Except for the addition of the driveway, the previous plans and approvals for the subject lots remain unchanged. Number two, this planning board has no jurisdiction over the parcel known as 110 Prospect Street, which lies in the town of New Paltz. Accordingly, this resolution grants no writ or approvals with regard to that parcel. This approval pertains only to the driveway across 20 and 22 Cooper Street to access 110 Prospect Street. So I'd like to get a motion approving PB 24-14, 20 and 22 Cooper Street with the stated specific conditions.
So
Second,
Second.
and could we have a roll call vote?
Sure, Rachel?
I'm gonna say nay because I feel strongly about driveway. I know it's not gonna make any difference.
Okay, Amy,
Aye.
Rich,
aye.
Terry,
Aye.
Zach.
Aye. All right, so that is approved and we'll get you the signed copy.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. So it will be there in this one?
Yeah, I'll get that one correction and then we'll have Zach sign it. So by the end of the week, I should have it. I can email it to you, but if you need to, if you want to pick up a printed copy.
Let me know.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You can keep that. if you
Oh,
want.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
The only change will be the other names will be added.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have PB 2403, 2729 Main Street. Hello.
John Joseph, since we were here last, we added, as per the conversation with the traffic engineers, the do not enter and one-way on the pavement. That's really the only change. I know it was sent to the DOT and I know it was sent to, county planning.
Yeah.
But county planning doesn't meet till tomorrow night, so I don't have a response from them. The DOT did issue a response, so.
Yeah, Mike, could you just explain the DOT's response briefly?
Yes, so surprisingly, and I was as confused as everybody else was, apparently from the light, the traffic light to the bridge, even though it is Route 299, which is a state highway, it is under the jurisdiction, according to the DOT, of the village of New Paltz. And then from the bridge, and they don't clarify this, but according to our fire inspector, who is the assistant fire chief, the rest of 299 to Route 4455 is actually a county road, which is totally against the norm. Normally, if it is a state road, it is managed by the DOT. So the letter we got back from the DOT, which I put in the folder, stated that they have no jurisdiction over this road. So when we referred it to them, they came back with that comment of, we don't have any comments because we have no jurisdiction. All that is submitted to the county planning board, which will, as Mr. Joseph said, we'll be reviewing tomorrow night. And they normally turn the referrals around in about a week. So by next meeting, by midweek next week, we should have it.
Okay. Thank you. So I reviewed the site plan. I mean, it seems like most of the things we talked about are in it. Is there any mention of the basement tenant in this site plan?
No, right now I don't have it. So,
Okay,
like,
but
Is that even
do you
possible?
want one in the future?
I mean, I don't, look, it's a very limited pool that would have any interest. As I sit here today, the space is half finished, half raw. It's in very bad condition. So what they would use it for, I don't know.
Don't they have to decontaminate it? Or like the basement? I don't even know if there's enough windows.
Yeah.
It's not in the site plan.
Yeah,
we
I
have
don't think
discussed
we need to,
Right.
Okay,
we shouldn't have.
so then if it's not on the site plan, yeah, I want to confirm that you have how many extra parking spaces and,
Well, there's 7 extra parking spaces
okay,
at the moment.
understood. I mean, at this point, I think, we've gone back and forth enough. I'm feeling like this should be opened up to public comment and we should get public input on it. And then at that next meeting, we also, would get any feedback from the Ulster County Planning Board. And so the board can make a better determination at that point.
So, I mean, I feel like it was brought up at every single meeting about the NBR, whatever, the Gateway District. That the parking areas are to be sited behind the structure. And this is brought up over and over again, and it still keeps coming back with the green space being taken apart. And I just feel that I don't understand why that can't just be resolved. Got the whole lot across the street, with crosswalks or whatever, but I'm very uncomfortable with that. And I feel like we've brought it up each time and we should just,
Well,
just leave the green space and let people park across the street.
I don't think, the application is going to change, and I think it's our duty as board to review it and then vote on it after the process is done, so.
But you've seen you understand why we're asking for this, and you've seen the, I took a picture of it, so I don't have.
It's the gateway design.
The gateway design standard, you've seen that, where it says,
I have.
yeah,
And there's a provision for the parking cannot be provided in the rear, similar to what the hotel did. There was no ability to do that. They parked on the side and they screened it. So it's a very similar application, and honestly, from a public safety standpoint, I think taking these 4 spaces that are on that odd corner, putting them in here. Is better from a public safety standard. I do have 7 extra spaces and I am willing to, in lieu of this area. Remove 7 parking spaces over here, so then I have just enough, and I'll just warehouse these. Cause I don't know what the future use of the building is gonna be, but I'm hoping these guys stay forever and I never have to do anything. That's my plan, but may not always work out. So I'm willing, in the lieu of the 4, you're getting 7, so you're getting a much larger green area.
I don't see why we couldn't have both.
I wouldn't meet your parking codes.
Including all those spaces across the street.
There's a parking table that's clear, so you just have to look at that to see. They would not count, there would not be sufficient parking, both were changed. But, the gateway standards couldn't be any more clear. It's not the case that you're unable to cite the parking in any other location. In fact, you have parking that exceeds the requirement in the configuration that would include not having to change that space. The gateway code, very specifically, I saw the memo. I went back and I read the memo that you'd written with regard to the gateway code, and I noticed that you excluded the elements of the gateway code that we're citing that make your proposal in violation to the gateway code. You chose other comments from the gateway code, but the ones that you didn't include was that its intention to have an attractive visual environment in and around the site, that all parking areas must be sited behind the structure, and that when parking is visible from the street, a planting buffer must be established. Which, in fact, because of the improvements you're looking to make on this combined plan, I'm going to recommend that you also establish a planting buffer on Wirtz Road across the street on what would be the west side of the parking that's there. Because that would also be something that this board can recommend in compliance with the gateway standards. So the gateway standards are pretty specific about this. They don't provide for your ability to put those additional spots. And they're not required because they exceed the number of parking spots for the plan. And I think, Zach, if you think procedurally you want to just move forward and vote when we're prepared to vote, then I'm happy to do that.
That's, yeah, I thought that was the best course of action, and that hearing from the public at this time would also be valuable too. And the Ulster County Planning Board. But yeah, I mean, I agree with all your points, Rich. Are there any other comments on this revision?
I have a couple quick comments.
Sure.
First of all, I just want to rehash something that I mentioned at another meeting, that I think that this developer is bringing a very valuable service to our community. This is an investment in the well-being of our residents, having a walkable gym. We want to have a walkable downtown. Part of having a walkable downtown is having a gym, cutting down on traffic, because residents who live within a mile or 2 of the gym can walk there and not have to take their car out. A lot of people who may be coming from over the mountain to work, they're not necessarily going to go to this gym. They're going to keep going and go to another gym with a swimming pool, because honestly, if I was going to get my car, I'd rather go to a gym with a pool, personally. I do have a couple comments about the safety of the parking lot. I live, just so everybody knows, I live a half a block from there. I live at 11 North Chestnut Street. So I'm walking through there almost every day. I don't take my car when I go to the post office or when I go to the liquor store, or when I walk downtown. Generally, I'm a walker. And I have noticed, first of all, for the last 5 or 6 years, we had a farmer's market right behind this project. And that was, I think, hosted by the village. There was never any safety concern for the farmers or the families walking around in the parking lot. We've never had an accident that I could find.
I asked the police department in the last 5 years.
So I didn't see anything. So I went over that. So that was one point I wanted to make. Another point about the green space. I like having green also. I think it's very important that we have green and flowers and keep our gateway and our downtown as beautiful as possible. But I do want to make a couple comments about the picnic tables I've been noticing. I walked by there a few times. I got panhandles. People asking you for money. I noticed late at night I passed by there and there's a lot of overflow from the bar, people drinking, people smoking. And I'm not against smoking or drinking, for the record. But I don't think that's necessarily what we want to reflect in our downtown or why that we have a picnic table there. We put the picnic table there for the pandemic so that people had a place to go. So I don't really know what it's doing there now. I'm not really sure if I personally love the use of that space.
Farmers market, people eat.
I think that from what I understand, that the farmers market is moved now down to the fairgrounds and they're doing it over there now.
Oh, really?
That's what I was told. And a lot of people, by the way, are upset about that because they can't walk there.
Right.
And that was kind of the whole point, was to give people who don't have cars access. So I'm a little upset about that personally, but that's like the subject. And I also wanted to say that I think that John could bring in some more shrubbery and some nice planters and stuff into that parking area and really green it up. I think he's really good at that. You can see what he did in ShopRite, all the plantings all around the parking, and I think he knows what to do.
It's a lot of trees there.
Yeah, and I think he could do that in his parking lot, and I think he could put some planters around if he wanted to, and that might
Which-
make people feel,
Which parking lot are you referring to?
all of them. Especially the one where we're gonna potentially take away the green. So that was an idea I came up with. Anyway, I think it's a good thing for residents, and I think for me, at least, it outweighs any bad things about parking or losing a tiny little piece of grass.
I called Ignite Fitness, they have them for people. Ignite Fitness, it's not that much farther up the hill, just walk up.
But you can't walk all the way up there if you live downtown easily.
I do it all the time.
This board is not in a position to talk about competitive businesses and whether that makes sense.
Right, I'm just saying.
I'm just talking about a walkable gym, that's all I said.
Okay.
That's, I don't, yeah. I think neither of the comments is what this board is here to speak about.
Okay, well, thank you for those. Makes sense. At this time, I'd like to get a motion to schedule the public hearing for our next meeting, August 20th. If that is given, the applicant thinks they can get all the notices out with
I'll get things out to you tomorrow. You would have to get notices mailed out and the signage by Saturday.
Yeah, Barry's office will do it for me, so if you could get me the list tomorrow.
You'll have it tomorrow.
Okay, and then I have to, post it in the window, right?
Yes,
That's gonna be by Saturday.
by Saturday as well.
Okay.
It's gotta be 10 days before the public hearing, so 4 days from today.
Okay.
Yeah, so by Saturday.
Okay. Okay, I think we can meet the deadline. I don't, how many neighbors are there?
I don't know, I haven't pulled the list. It's everybody within 200 feet of, and given that your 3 parcels, it's probably gonna be. Cause I have to include all 3 parcels, cause they're all part of your site plan.
We did it for the ZBA and there wasn't that many on the list.
Yeah, there's big properties, so I have no idea what the number will be.
Okay, yeah, just get it to me. I'll grade it on this side.
Probably 20, 25.
Okay.
all right, so we get a motion to schedule a public hearing for August 20th.
So,
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And. Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of.
Just for my clarification, this is already a type 2 with a seeker, right? So, okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Predated me, I just wanted to be sure.
And I guess only wanted to ask one more clarification about the. Land banking spots across the street, so you. Are not willing to. Permanently turn that into green space, only. Land bank them in case you need them in the future.
Correct. So what would happen is if the use of this building changes. And the change of that use requires the 7 parking spaces.
Right.
what I would do, and you put this in the resolution, that I would go to the ZBA and seek a variance for the 7 spaces. If the variance is denied, I can't lose the opportunity to rent the building. So that's why you land back them instead. And then change of the use, I'll come back to the board. And the board can make the recommendation to the ZBA that they grant it. And then those 7 spots will just stay green space, but I don't want to restrict the potential use of the building.
So it's only, that issue would only arise if the use, change of use was happening, not if you wanted to rent it to a new tenant, isn't that?
Well, no, so your zoning requires different uses have different parking requirements. Okay, by way of example, if I found somebody that wanted the basement and they had 2 employees, I made it 2 spots. Now, I could easily just go to the ZBA, request a variance. And I presume it would be granted, and then I wouldn't need it to change anything. So that's really the purpose of it, not so that it protects the future use of the building. And it really puts the onus on the planning board or the ZBA to grant the variance as they see fit. If they think that the use requires the parking, then they're not gonna grant the variance, and that would restrict the use of the building.
Okay, and Emily, do you think that's a reasonable thing we could say in special conditions that the applicant would have to apply for a variance before they?
I can think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, yeah,
Let's have a public hearing.
yeah.
We'll worry about the resolution.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering if that was even something that could be.
We got ahead.
All right. That's all for tonight then.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice night.
So lastly, we have PB 2404, 3 Water Street.
As you know, I'm recused from this and I'll be leaving for the evening. Thank you.
Good night.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I purposely put this at the end of the agenda, assuming that would be the case, but
Okay.
since the alternate is here and there's a recusal.
Thank you.
What you should do, Zach, is appoint Nikki to replace Amy due to the recusal.
Okay, so I'd like to appoint Nikki to replace Amy due to her recusal.
Right. And Bill Penn, bringing the right. Oh, yeah, right.
Good evening. Oh, welcome back. I was wondering if you could just start by telling us some of the new changes, walking us through the new site plan that we have here.
Yeah, essentially what we're trying to do is just kind of bring some more detail from the planning board as requested. This isn't our first time in front of you for a site plan review. So what we really tried to do with the plan in front of you today is just check all of the boxes from the site plan, special use permit checklist. We think that we've added the appropriate details to do the parking lot. We were looking to do the wooden planters, wheel stops, and just bring some order to the current existing site. We had Alex submitted a letter of the parking lot calculations that he came up with, and that determination was that we have ample parking for the proposed uses at the building. We've also included the site location of the dumpster, handicap parking, a loading zone on the Water Street side of the site.
And we considered some of the things that you guys raised and the other things about the Gateway District, and that obviously we don't have the ability to put parking behind this building because there's the river. So providing wooden planters with a diverse amount of vining plants that would sit towards the front of the green space creates a bit of a better aesthetic and green wall when you're looking at the space and looking towards the parking lot, while giving the backside that's facing on the inside of the parking lot the ability to have a designated sign stating that it is parking either for the residential, the employee, or the business. So just trying to create a structured plan for the parking lot that allows that green space to thrive as green space while keeping it as structured as possible in the parking lot.
And then we furthermore had the engineer that drew the site plan for approval. We just kind of wanted to make sure that it was clear that we have proposed low height planting beds. Specifically so that we do not block the line of sight of traffic either entering or exiting the parking lot, as well as people making a left turn from Main Street onto Water Street. So there was a specific line of sight consideration there. We're not going to plant vining beams that are gonna grow 10 feet tall. We're gonna keep everything low to the ground. I believe some of the planning board members are aware, we're farmers professionally. We do commercial farming, agricultural operations. So we do have a pretty good grasp about the kinds of plants and seasonal varieties that we'd like to include.
Happy to provide a list if you guys want. I just wasn't sure if you wanted to see like 50 varieties, but I'm very happy to provide that list. Basically devised a planting schedule that would require pretty much an all-season bloom. Then in the winter months, there would be green vinery that would be able to be green throughout the winter. The goal is to have planting within that green space that naturally blocks the being able to cross, forces people over to the rail trail crossing. But keep beautification in the forefront and try to have things that are within a rotational blooming period throughout spring, summer, and fall.
And we think one of the unique features of this site is that it boasts more than 12,000 square feet of green space that is pseudo public. It is a private property, but I think in its practical use, I do believe that it is very much open for residents and tourists to walk through, enjoy the art sculptures that we maintain. And also just, there's a place for birds, bees, squirrels, and all the other things that live in that part of town. Woodchucks.
Okay, so all of the existing trees and art and stuff, that's all staying there, but
Yeah.
you're just planting.
We're creating
Stuff
beds
around.
around each of the sculptures to essentially create a natural barrier from a person walking through that space and being able to actually physically touch those sculptures and or do something on them creates just a little bit of a separation.
Sure.
As renters, we haven't been granted the ability to do anything other thing.
Okay, and I guess I need to just look back at the zoning code and see what it says about the sculptures. I'm not sure we have, are they part of an approved site plan from before?
And there was
Site plan.
no site plan.
Yeah.
And that was pre-established, and we did talk to the building inspector, Alex. He did actually have to go back and look up a variance that was granted in the 80s for the usage. So there was a lot of gray area about this site in particular, the uses that were allowed. He did come up and get back to us and just make sure that it was clear that there are 4 uses for the space, so it allows for the residential second floor, as well as having the retail on the first floor.
That's 2 uses.
Office,
Office.
mixed use, office, residential, and retail have all been,
But residential can only be on that second floor.
and we cannot add residences to the current approved units.
Yes.
So the sculptures predate code is my understanding. The date on one of them is 1983. I believe it's etched into the steel, and I don't
Some of
actually
them
know.
have been added much more recently. And I think there is a question about whether those are allowed under the zoning code. So that's something I just would want to look into or want to talk to Alex.
I can check with Alex. He did do based on the new site plan that was submitted, and I apologize, I don't think I sent it to you, or maybe I did. But it's in the Google Drive, is a new analysis of the parking. he did come out with more than you had, but he also said you had enough.
Yes, I think that was the determination, is that we have.
Did I send you a copy? And I apologize.
I think we got.
Yeah, I have one.
I
have a
couldn't
copy.
remember if I did or didn't. He just did that
Yeah,
when you sent the new site plan.
and definitely send my regards to him for doing that. I really
Yeah.
appreciate his help.
Well, I asked him to double check that the parking still met.
Right.
standards and, yeah.
And so the plan as proposed, the reason we wanted to do it this way is because essentially there is no grading, there is no re-leveling, there is no paving, there is no changes to the site as it currently exists in order to accommodate the 15 parking spaces as proposed. We did have the offer to go up to 17 spaces, but it would require us to regrade the two spots that are on the Water Street adjacent parallel parking. We don't necessarily like that idea. We think it would bring a lot of debris,
There's trees
trucks,
there. Yeah.
a lot
we
of
don't.
just unwanted activity on that corner during construction. So we just wanted to keep it as simple yet organized as we could possibly bring to the village.
However, the site plan describes a shale parking area.
Correct.
That's kind. My untrained eye seems to say that shale parking area basically drains into Water Street.
Right, so the
All the water from that parking lot is gonna go to that catch basin, along with the shale, along with the gravel, into that manhole, into that catch basin.
Has there been a complaint that has been graded prior to this about that?
No, I'm bringing it up.
No, I'm just.
I'm bringing it up.
And it's my understanding that the 12-inch pipe that was installed here with the storm drain, that was the village that put that in after, I think there used to be a little bit of a problem with floodwaters backing up there. And I believe since the village put the storm drain in, if there has been no.
But wouldn't this be the time that we improve that parking lot?
Would
We're basically
pavement
draining
costs?
the gravel parking lot into the street. To me, this is the time to fix this. I mean, the other applicants who come before us with parking lots, they have stormwater plans, they have retention basins, they have all kinds of ways to keep the water from flowing into the village streets.
I don't think we've referred this to our engineer yet, but that might be a step that,
Or to DPW.
yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Yeah, this is almost the equivalent of the first meeting, because everything you had preliminary was to get to
Okay.
the site plan, but
Okay.
now this is really the first look at this site plan. It's all the pieces being brought together into one place.
okay.
So,
And not to put too fine a point on it, but there is a handicap parking street. Is there one over here on the west side of Water Street? No, second
Yes,
one.
that is the
Yes.
intended proposed handicap parking spot.
And bike rack is located in the far back of the parking lot.
It is
Connected to
adjacent.
the rail trail, where the majority of the bikes would come in and we've watched them come
Fair
in,
enough.
yeah, yeah. We fully support bicycling and
No,
walking.
I got
yeah,
it. I missed that. My mistake.
Can I request, and I don't know if I'm much more familiar with seeing the parking requirement in a table
Right.
that is, clearly laid out instead of the kind of narrative, if that can be changed.
So if it would suffice, I would take the letter there from Alex, the building inspector, and I would
replace that.
put that in the parking table
Mhm.
in place of what we have proposed there.
And then I think when I count these, if these are all forward in spaces, as I think they are, I count 16 unless I'm over counting maybe some of the ones over here, because if you include the handicap parking.
I mean, only the ones with the curb stops should be counted.
Yes, not planters, not curb stops.
9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
I think you're correct, Rich. I believe with the ADA space, I believe it is 16.
16. And then we haven't had any engineers look at this. I'm guessing someone who drew this plan. The parallel parking here, if you pull in, do you pull in here and then parallel park into that 14, this space here? I don't think that's possible. You'd have to nose into it. Yeah, just double check whether those can
Yeah.
actually be parallel parking.
Right.
Somebody who does this usually can do lines for you and say, oh, wait, there's no way to back into that.
I'm gonna go on 14, the curves, so.
I thought I.
It's not the curves, and can we just like clarify too, for the record, that the question at hand is there adequate parking? 15 or 16 spaces, I think the building inspector's calculations show that regardless of the approved site plan, we do have adequate parking
We can see.
without making changes to the grading, leveling, or the parking lot itself.
And the reason that's the case is because the size of the weedery is so small in terms of square foot. It requires very few spaces. We don't have a lot of experience with the use. But that's actually a comment I wanted to explore with the board. But anyway, sticking with this, let's get the right number of spaces that are in the plan right, and let's make sure each of those spaces works from a traffic engineering perspective.
We do have a traffic based on one of our previous resolutions, when we've requested a traffic study.
Yeah.
So we do have the parking counts are in, so they have the data for the traffic study. And our engineer will be able to provide a traffic study at a future meeting.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have him include the parallel parking,
Just the
lines.
movements, they would call them the movements, that's what they would call it within the law. Just make sure those work for all the spots that are proposed.
Will do.
Got it.
It's potentially great that you would have in excess of the requirement because we're not positive the requirement is accurate for, it's like, we just
Right.
don't have a lot of experience.
And we want to encourage students, veterans, and other
Others.
similar, everyone over age 21 and up is the requirement for state law. But essentially, we would like to encourage our patrons to ride a bike. Maybe there's an incentive program in our dispensary that, ride your bike, get a 10% discount or something like that. So we want to encourage pedestrian and bicycle traffic over vehicular traffic.
Yeah.
So the thing I wanted to mention is that, we had a number of dispensary applicants some time ago, one of which eventually got approved and opened. And at that time, there was a lot of conversation, and I contributed to the conversation about the concern of traffic being an issue because of what I experienced as a shopper. Going to places like Massachusetts and New Jersey with the demand for dispensary service. And I think that although we haven't done a retrospective study or we haven't done a real life study, I think that what we've seen is a lot of the concerns we had for like the grand opening, creating a traffic jam all the way up 299 just didn't happen with this dispensary that opened in town. So I am glad that we requested a traffic study of this applicant, but I also just I think that there's a consideration of precedent, but there's also a consideration of what we now have that is experience. And I think that we should be thinking about how those things work together. So just because it was precedent that we sounded an alarm about the last dispensary proposals, because we thought they were going to create huge traffic demand, they didn't. And it's probably likely to reason that this one won't either. So I just wanted to mention that it's something that I've been thinking about as we consider this applicant. And then the other thing so anyway, I'll stop there. And I have one other thing I wanted to share.
Go ahead.
The other thing I wanted to share is if the standard operating procedure of the way these businesses operate is something that we're supposed to take into consideration and be accountable to in our decision to approve them. That is to say, we went with the last proposal just saying it's going to comply with all the state laws that regulate cannabis dispensaries. And we're now being presented with these documents about them. And I have no way of judging whether these documents are compliant with state law. So I just wanted to caution us to say that, while it's great that all this SOP and other, ways of operating are being presented to this board, I'm not taking responsibility for reviewing those and indicating that they're gonna be compliant in any way.
No, right.
And I also want to make sure that that's clear to the public, who I think we got at least one, comment about this. The public knows that we're not the ones assessing whether these proposed rules and regulations and operating procedures that are presented to us are compliant or adequate in any way. Because we're not.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
May I address something or say something?
Sure.
We would be first definitely happy to provide with any sort of actually state mandated and compliance, anything like that, as well as a certificate that was provided to me to the state for completing a compliance program that required me to be able to go through schooling to understand the law around it, how to operate and how to understand these rules and then actually put them into action. I would be happy to share anything from that as well as our certificates and could also reach out to the state board myself and see if there is something that they could provide that could better provide the board with an understanding of really what we're required to follow in order to continue to operate. And they watch us very closely. We are required to submit things monthly to the state on a very regular basis. So
Thanks.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is actually almost the opposite, which is that I think what we need to be careful about is the fact that the resolution should include that you would be compliant with any required, laws and regulations to operate this kind of business. But we're not assessing whether your practices are.
Gotcha. We're not
Yeah.
compliance enforcement.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask, you mind if I ask him, are you certified as a micro business or as a?
Yeah.
Correct.
So, just for the board's clarification, a micro business is a different type rather than,
A retailer.
for example, a retailer.
Yeah.
It's a much, I don't wanna say lesser, but they are the provider of all aspects in that they are growing it themselves, they are moving it.
Footage restrictions and all.
Yeah,
that.
and the micro business is more agriculturally based than the other, which is strictly retail. So there are much more confining regulations for them within the state regulations involving volume and things like that. So.
Yeah, there is a state mandate, which is called the seed to sale system, which is a BioTrack system, which requires us to track every single product and plant from the very moment we put it in a soil to the time we sell it to a customer. So it is very intense to document.
Okay. Yeah.
Another thing that hasn't found its way onto the plan yet, as far as I can tell, is a way of addressing what we all agreed was the likely foot traffic crossing Water Street in that location from the opening of your parking to the entrance of the establishment.
I do believe that the arrows of the entrances and exits of the building, and that's in front of the covered entry there. There should be 2 sets of lines. If it's not on that, and I have it on.
Right.
So
That
what
or-
is that, 22.6 and 28?
26.9.
If that doesn't do anything to make that safe, that just tells us that that just tells us that there'll be lots of people crossing very close to the Main Street intersection. So I don't know whether this is a village, a DPW
It's a
question.
DPW question because the DPW superintendent would have to sign off. If the board wanted a crosswalk there, DPW would have to accept it because with that crosswalk comes liability. So I will tell you, many highway superintendents and DPW superintendents are reluctant for unless it's at a signalized intersection, either a stop sign or a light, to have a crosswalk because there's no control over the situation.
Yeah, and I mean, there aren't sidewalks on either
Yeah.
side of the street, so I really doubt they would.
I mean, perhaps a crosswalk at the intersection of Main Street might be, but it's it's gonna mean making the people go, and we all know reality, they're not gonna do that, they're gonna walk it across the street.
We are trying to divert everyone onto the Water Street, and trying to avoid at all costs any pedestrian traffic crossing the corner of Main Street. As we've witnessed several times, people tend to just come through the green area at the corner of Water Street and Main Street, and will cross adjacently to the rock sculpture, the viewpoint there. So we are trying to direct everyone with the planters in the parking lot that they have to go from the catch basin area to cross the street there. So we'd love to get a recommendation from the DPW or whoever can advise on what's
Yeah.
best there.
I mean, the board could certainly request of the DPW that they look at the idea of a crosswalk there, and, you know, I don't wanna speak for them and say what his answer will be, but.
I definitely want to recommend that, and I want to recommend it to be further south on Water Street from Main Street, because when there's a cars making a left turn on Main Street, I don't think what we want to do is encourage people to be crossing Water Street
No.
immediately as the left turns are being made. So those arrows that are labeled 22 feet 6 and 26.9, I think if those are meant to be people crossing, that's, I think, a much more dangerous place to encourage people to cross than further in.
Okay,
on
We
Water
definitely agree. So,
we can.
you know,
we can
coming
leave that
over
one.
at the edge of the pavers
Yeah.
there on the south side of the building.
Which we can add signage on both sides of the street at the parking lot when you're getting out of your car, coming out of the parking lot to cross the street, and then as you exit the building to try to cross back.
Or even, you know, Rich, you had.
Yeah,
You're
like
moving
that.
here where you have the edge of the planter,
Mm-hmm,
instead of just signage, some posts and almost gating.
yeah.
Right.
And we are in the process of working through, we've gotten paint colors and updates to do the exteriors. We talked through with the historical committee, they've come to see the site. They're happy with our color choices.
Great.
So we do plan to do exterior updates and I think make the location of that entrance a lot more clear. And we really took into consideration that we don't want this to be in the gateways space. All the dispensaries in the state are required to have film covering within their windows. We've chosen a really lovely and light choice that I think just brings
Non-reflective.
non-reflective, but the reason that is the dispensary door is on the side of the building, so we're not, where there's no exterior signing, above the building that is going to have something that says the weedery or anything like that, it will, be inside. And then our opening for the first 3 months, we are only doing a very restricted pre-order online with a scheduled pickup so that we can track the flow of traffic of every customer and see what the community is looking like as far as how much are looking to order. So we are definitely looking at how many people are need to cross and at the flow of what they're doing. So we can go back and work on that more.
So that last thing you mentioned is a procedure that we might ask for you to make sure we understand and might get included as a condition in the resolution. Because that is something that does concern the board's decisions, which is how you're gonna regulate traffic and customer flow during your opening period.
Yeah.
That, you know, as opposed to some of the other things that were about, like, how do you disregard your product or something?
Yeah, and we have a full opening phase plan. We can amend slightly to provide it so that it can be for public knowledge. But we wanted to get through the site plan first, so we wanted to make sure that this made sense before we really were showing you. This is what's happening every hour on the hour, how it's happening during our opening hours.
And I do believe you all received a copy of the security and safety plan summary that we submitted to you. As well as the operational plan that has some of those details in there. Maybe we can kind of just highlight some of the issues that you pointed out today.
Just from a procedural point, any of the signage that you've talked about you're proposing? Besides needing the location on the site plan, you should have your engineer or somebody do another sheet with sort of a mock-up of what that sign will look like, size.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, okay, great, we can
Is
provide
that
that.
something the board will need to see as well?
Okay. Yeah, we have that being created, so we can provide that.
Okay, were there any other questions from the board at this time? I guess, do we need a resolution to refer this to the DPW and our?
We should, the
Um,
DPW and the village
Village.
engineer at this
Yeah.
point. Yeah, I don't think it's ready for county planning board yet.
No, I think there's still a number of things that we wanna figure out.
And do we want to proactively, you said there's going to be a traffic study coming?
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to
We
make
did.
sure that we are, there was a resolution to have the engineer review the plan, and we did make a $1,500 deposit, escrow deposit for that resolution.
Oh,
And
so we
then
don't-
there was a second resolution at the last meeting where the traffic study was decided on, but we don't know the escrow amount of that.
Yeah,
Well, there's only one escrow account, and so that's used for any expenses that.
Right.
Right.
Gotcha.
But for the traffic study, you would generate a traffic study and send it to us, and then our traffic consultant would review it.
Right.
So to be clear, so the short answer is though, we should. If you've already paid the 1,500 escrow, if we are moving into a traffic consultant. We will be sending you a request to up that amount because the traffic consultant alone is usually a couple $1,000s.
I know.
But that's something Nicole and I can just internally do a memo to increase it by the appropriate amount.
And just a thought of just from a previous applicant about the New York State Route 299. This is actually in the jurisdiction of the village. This is not a county.
Was a surprise to me, but according to the New York State DOT, the section from the bridge to the light is a village, so in that situation, the village DPW has jurisdiction. I was aware that they
So it's-
plowed it, but I thought it was just an agreement, and it turns out it's actually their jurisdiction. So when we refer it to DPW to look at Water Street, we can also ask him to look at Main Street as well.
So does that mean that we have some, or could make some suggestions about the crosswalk across
We
to?
can make suggestions, absolutely, but still it's up to the head of the DPW whether he accepts them or not, because he, in that position, he becomes responsible for A, the maintenance, and B, the safety of them and the liability of that goes along with it. So to have something that is not at a signalized intersection, meaning a stoplight or a stop sign, a mid-street crossing of a crosswalk, I know there's many in New Paltz, but it does add concern because it's not as controlled.
Could you possibly make a crosswalk that's already existing? Could you make it wider?
I don't know, but that's a good question.
Because you know how that crosswalk, it just is for the rail trail when you're
Yes.
crossing 299 there. But then there's this tiny piece of sidewalk that's like only a foot wide and most people are crossing right there.
Understood.
Which is where the entrance to Water Street Market is.
Right, and we looked
So-
into this too, if we were to utilize the existing crossing from the rail trail, we would essentially need an easement from 7 Water Street in order to cross the street there, and then the non-existing sidewalk on that south side of the project. It just didn't seem like it made a lot of sense to have people walking there.
With no
Well,
sidewalk. With or without anything happening down there, if we had enough jurisdiction to make that crosswalk wider, it would be safer. Because of the fact that it doesn't line up with the entrance to Water Street Market, and when people are crossing that are pedestrians, not bike riders.
Mhm.
But people who are just walking, that's where they wanna cross the street. And so they end up crossing not in the crosswalk.
Okay.
Are you talking
yeah,
about on Main Street? or-
that's-
Yeah.
And further up,
It's not on this plan, not shown on. this
No,
plan.
it's not shown on the plan, but if
Ah.
that's, I was always told, oh, you can't do that, we couldn't do that because it was the county, but now that it's village.
So I'm told, we will confirm that.
Yeah. But the
Um,
county's still responsible for the crosswalk, so they might just not. do
Yeah.
that.
What I could do, I don't know if the board wants to wait for the traffic study to send to DPW, or we could send, and I could draft a letter that just asking him to review the action of pedestrian crossing, both either Water Street or both Main Street and Water Street, to just have him take a look at that for the moment. And then when you get the traffic study, we can certainly have him look at that.
Yeah, I'd like to start with that and,
Yeah.
I mean,
Because
just,
that may dictate what the traffic study says too, depending on where that crossing is,
sure.
or if it exists.
But given that we already have had a resolution to refer it to the,
I think you had it for, and I'm not sure, I mean, it doesn't hurt to do it again,
okay.
if you've already done it, it's sort of.
Motion to confirm the resolution.
we already paid his retainers, so
Yeah.
getting the traffic.
And this is to the
The thing
engineer
about-
and DPW.
Right, so to refer to engineer and DPW, and there was a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And just to clarify, the DPW, we also wanted to ask about the stormwater, right, and the gravel
Yes.
parking lot?
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, no, we're gonna have to have an engineer look back.
Okay,
Well, we're sending the both, so I'll ask them both to
Yeah,
look at it,
that's
because
fine.
DPW certainly is concerned because they maintain that. The catch base, so, well, the local
Yeah,
account.
I agree, yes, they are concerned, but we need somebody with a license to take a look at this.
Okay. Are there any other steps that we can take tonight, or was that
Um,
gonna be it?
do we need to type it for seeker, or have we?
I think we
I
have already
believe we've done that.
pre-existing building, yeah.
And we would wait until the traffic study and the recommendations from the engineer and DPW to schedule a public hearing, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. So I think that's all for tonight, but thank you for creating the site plan. Definitely, we're it's a lot further along now. Good to see it.
Yeah, we're just two
Okay.
farmers. Selling
And as
vegetables,
far
trying
as-
to pay for this.
As far as updating your site plan, you may wanna, not make any changes now and resubmit immediately because out of your traffic study, it's up to you. I certainly don't need paper copies each time, if you wanna just make changes and resubmit electronically.
Absolutely.
No need to,
Bring it 317 by 24.
exactly, so.
Very good.
But, do you think you will have the traffic study before the next meeting?
That's the plan.
Okay. If you
I
get
know
it to
that,
me before the end of next week, then I can get it on the agenda, and if not, it'll be the following meeting, so.
Thank you.
yeah, we'll work to get that to you for the meeting of the plan.
Thank
Great,
you
I think it's.
very much, guys.
Good night. Thank you, Mayor Original.
Thank you.
The parking lot, we get a numbered on that motion to adjourn, please.
Motion, second.
Aye.
You wanna make sure we got a record that Nikki
Can I
voted on it. Thank you, everybody.